Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that? Help me!
Babes, this is the hot mess we are going to be working with today. Oh my goodness, and we need to do this together. I need all the support I can get to tackle this monstrosity. Okay, let's put it down because it's in heavy soil. The soil is literally like cement, which is one of the issues this plant even has. So let's put it down and let's have a deep dive into the problems this plant has and my approach to remedy them. It's going to be an interesting video, babe, so hang in there. Oh, so this poor Monstera is actually not mine. Thankfully, it belongs to a client of mine. And this is why in one of my videos, I categorically stated that I do not personally recommend Monstera Deliciousa for beginners. Oftentimes, beginners do not realize that this is a vining plant that needs to attach onto something. And if you're not versed with moss poles and how to attach plants to them, you might end up with an awful looking contraption like this. So in this case, my client tried to use this piece of plank or wood and desperately tried to wrap the plant around it. But as you can see, it's a hot, smoking mess. Another thing you obviously notice is that pretty much half of the entire stem of this plant is bare, which obviously means that this plant has lost a lot of bottom leaves, and it could potentially be for a couple of reasons. One, it could be from overwatering, which I suspect, judging how heavy this soil is. So we're definitely going to get into the soil and unpause the plant and see what's going on there. Secondly, it could be from low light exposure. When a plant is exposed to low light, it will lose the lower leaves because oftentimes the lower leaves do not have as much access to light as the upper leaves. So they tend to always go out first. But I'm actually ruling that out completely in this case because this plant was grown outdoors, which is why, as you can see here, you can see lots of signs of sunburn. This is what sunburnt leaves look like. Unfortunately, my client, when he bought this plant, they did not advise him that this is a shade-needing plant. So this plant was kept under the vicious Nigerian sun, and this is what you get. Unfortunately, there's still quite a lack of information when it comes to houseplant care in this part of the world, and these are the consequences of it. Thankfully, there are people like me who will remedy these things for a fee. This is not a charity organization. We do charge for these things. Now, the unfortunate thing is that no matter what I do, no matter what anyone does, actually, new leaves are not going to come out from this bare stem. That's not gonna happen. So the only thing, and it seems brutal, but the only thing that can be done to get this plant to actually grow and be full and have more leaves is actually to chop it off.
What?
Yes, to chop it off. And I'm going to show you the appropriate place to readily prune a plant like this from. It's gonna be an interesting video, and we're gonna do this together. So hang in there. So enough talk, let's get to work. First thing we're going to do is go straight to the nitty-gritty. No horsing around, no shenanigans. We're going straight to chopping up this plant. Cutting it at first is going to make it easier for me to work with, and there's going to be less damage when I'm trying to repot it. Now, for good measure and to prevent infection of the cut part, I am going to just use some alcohol wipes to sterilize my shears. I typically don't do this. I'm really just being extra. Also, to the cut parts, to prevent infection, I always use cinnamon, and I'll do that subsequently, so continue to watch and observe. Let me put this ante on this table. So when it comes to cutting a bare plant like this that is exposed and leggy, you don't want to cut from here. No, because you're literally just defeating the entire purpose. You need to bear in mind that where you cut from is where the new growth will sprout from. So if you want a plant that grows to be full, you want to cut from as close to the base as possible. If I cut from here, then all of this is still going to be empty. Do you get where I'm coming from? Also, another thing to consider is to leave enough room in case rot occurs. So sometimes, regardless of whatever you do, regardless of how often you sanitize, yada yada yada, infection might occur in the part that was cut. So you want to leave enough room such that in the case infection occurs, you can then easily just cut below the infection and prevent it from spreading further down, while also giving your plant the chance to sprout out. So you want to bear those things in mind before you make the cut, okay? So I'm going to be cutting from here. Let me do here. I feel like this is fair. 3, 2, 1. Oh, yeah. So now we can easily take off this plant from this contraption and we can easily report it without damaging, the viable parts of this vine. Let me just quickly chop this off and remove this, hideous looking plank actually. Some of these aerial roots have gotten attached to the pot. These aerial roots, I'm going to be using some of them. They're actually quite important when you want to propagate your plants. I see lots of people chop them off and I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? So yeah, let's get rid of this contraption. And this is what we're going to be working with. Before we proceed to tackle this cutting and what we can salvage from it, I want to have a look at what's inside the soil to see if there's root rot. It's very, very important to always access the soil first to see all the creepy crawlies that may be there. So let's do that. Babes, the soil it is in, it's literally so heavy. It's like cement. But can I blow your mind? Can I blow your mind and tell you that, Monsteras? Oh my God, this soil is hard. What? Oh my goodness gracious. I think I'm gonna need a spade. Oh Lord. Oh God. Okay. We have to be careful to not damage any roots. But at this point, with this type of soil, damage to roots is inevitable. I was going to say, before I was taken aback by the toughness of this soil, it's literally soil from the ground, like from the earth, which, if not amended, can be as hard as stone. But I was going to say that Monsteras honestly really don't care the type of soil they grow in. They will pretty much grow in any soil. Like, these babes are so hardy, but with a soil of this nature that is so heavy, especially for a beginner, you're more likely to encounter overwatering this plant. Also, plants will generally prefer, especially aeroids like this, will generally prefer airy, chunky soil. But I do have to admit that getting access to chunky soil in this part of the world, or the amendments needed to make chunky soil, can be quite expensive. It's expensive and it's not sustainable for a lot of people, including myself. So oftentimes I would typically amend actual soil and use it for some of these plants. Let's see if we can. The struggle is real. Struggle is real, babes. Help me, Lord. I need your strength. Yes! Finally, we did it, Joe. Oh, Jesus Christ of the living Nazareth. We finally did it. To my surprise, there isn't much, I don't even really see any trace of rot here, which is quite commendable given the circumstances and the nature of the soil. You can see that the roots look really healthy. And smell test. It smells earthy. It smells nice, actually. I don't see any trace of root rot. So I'm going to be reporting this into a bigger pot. Actually, I'm going to explain why. But for now, let's tackle the vine that we propagated. The client wants me to actually propagate some and then separate it into another pot. I think For that, I will use this pot and then also pot the mother plant with some cuttings into a bigger pot. So yeah, let's do that. I'm still not going to get rid of this soil. I really don't like to waste soil in the garden. I'm still going to use some of it, and for the rest, I'm going to amend it to use later on in my garden, so it doesn't entirely go to waste. Okay, let's not waste things in the garden. Okay, let's not do that. Oh, babes, I have to sit down for this one. After that exhausting unpotting, I have to sit down before I collapse at my old age. At my millennial age. Anyways, so let's get into this. Realistically speaking, all these burnt and damaged leaves, in my experience, you don't have as much luck when it comes to propagating with them. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut them off. They're just going to rot and you're just going to end up wasting your time. So we're going to cut off all the sun damaged leaves. When it comes to propagating, you want to propagate with the healthiest looking leaves. Also, all these damaged leaves, we're gonna chop it off as well. And this is what we're left with. I feel like this is a bit battered, but this can still be used to grow a new plant. Now we have these aerial roots here that can greatly come in handy when it comes to propagating your plants, because oftentimes the new roots during propagation will sprout out from them. Unfortunately, we have a lower bottom section that doesn't have any leaves, even though it has a lot of area roots. So we're going to chop from here down. Guys, I also want to say that nothing in this plant is going to go to waste. I'm going to pot every part I'm cutting off, from the leaf to this. I'm going to pot it all in the plant because it's going to serve as organic matter and nutrients for the plant. Nothing must go to waste in our endeavor. So we have this leaf here, and if you look closely, this leaf is attached to a stem that has two area roots. So I'm just going to chop it from here. This is going to be one cutting I'm going to be propagating. Look at all the healthy area roots, and it has lots of, literally 1, 2, 3 nodes that we can work with, and then a healthy root. So yay to that. Now this part is an interesting one. You can see here, can you see here, babes? I'm going to take a cutting from here because it has those area roots and it's going to have 2 leaves. Let me just quickly do that before I change my mind. So we've gotten ourselves yet another cutting. This looks like quite a viable one. And look at those healthy area roots. So that's a good thing. Lastly, we have all of this. Now this leaf is attached to some very yummy area roots. So I'm just going to cut just below here. Now we have a cutting that has, I said I was going to sit down, but look at me standing up. Now we have a very yummy, healthy cutting with these lovely area roots. We are able to salvage 3 cuttings from this plant. So if all goes well, my clients will now have technically 4 Monstera plants. This is exciting. This is exciting. So the next step is to treat all the parts that I cut with the cinnamon. This is low-key my favorite part of this entire thing. Honestly, I just love applying cinnamon. I love the smell of cinnamon, guys. I love it, but I actually do not like cinnamon as a spice. The only reason why I have it in my kitchen counter is because of my propagations and my gardening life. I remember one time I made noodles and I literally added like a whole chunk of cinnamon into it, and this was when I was a broke university student. I really needed to eat those noodles. I had to force myself to eat. Half of it. Ever since that time, I've been so traumatized by cinnamon. Let's use it on this last one. Okay, babe, so let's start potting these cuttings. 2 of this will be potted into this. Now, in this huge basin, this is coco coir. I'm primarily going to be using coco coir to pot these plants and these cuttings. And you may be asking yourself, why coco coir? Because coco coir is a lot better and free draining and lighter than the soil this plant came in. Some may worry that it's going to retain too much moisture, but I've found that not to be the case in our climate because of the high light levels and sometimes the intense sun. Cocoa coir will actually dry out fast here while retaining enough moisture. So guys, don't worry, it's all good. I have a couple of my plants that I just grew entirely in cocoa coir. The only catch is that the client is going to have to fertilize his plants readily. I'm going to instruct him to fertilize these guys each time he needs to water them, especially after they have more established roots in like the coming weeks. So don't worry, babes. I'm going to be adding a bit of the soil it came with, just a bit of the soil it came with. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but if a plant has been in the same soil for a long time, when repotting that plant, you actually need to take some of that soil and add it to your new mix because it contains some healthy bacteria and whatnot that the plant is familiar to. I will actually limit the plant gets into shock or rot. So yeah, so it actually does help. Just add a bit of the soil the plant has grown in, you know, to whatever new mix you have. So let's just mix all of this together. Mix it. And then the fun part begins, babes. So you want to make sure the entire node is completely covered. We are done with this one. Now let's move on to the mother plant and the pot I have in mind. Now for the mother plant and this cutting into a lot of area roots, I'm going to be potting them together, but I'm going to be using this big pot. Now before you scream and shout, let me tell you why. So it's very, very important to profile your clients and the type of people they are in this line of business that I do. So my clients are definitely people that do not have the energy to constantly be reporting plants when they get root bound. So you want a situation where you have a setup that the plant will not get root bound as quickly. Also in the tropics and in this part of the world, plants get root bound really, really fast because it just grows so rapidly, especially if you pair it with a substrate like this that is quite light. So I don't want a situation where I put this in a smaller pot and then like literally in 4 months is root bound. My client has to deal with all of that again. No. In this pot, it will take at least a year before the plant needs to be reported, which is the whole idea, okay? Remember all these leaves that we cut off, I told you we're still going to use them. We're going to be adding them to this pot as well to provide some organic matter and to provide some nutrients as they break down gradually. So nothing goes to waste at the end of the day. I'm just going to chop. I need new shares, guys. I literally need to shop for a lot of gardening things, new shares. Maybe when my YouTube check comes in, we're gonna definitely go for like a gardening accessory haul, which is why I want you guys to please keep watching my video and please keep watching the ads. Please don't skip the ads, you know, because gardening is quite the expensive hobby if we're being real, like it, no jokes. This and look at how much lighter this entire thing is. Like,
oh my god, babes, at this point my microphone got disconnected and I didn't even know I was just yapping. Anyways, but I was saying that the next step to do is obviously to give the plant a moss pole. Now, moss poles are literally so expensive and difficult to find, so I have an alternative that I use, which are called grass poles. They are obviously made from grass. Do you guys want to see a video of how these grass poles are made? Let me know in the comments. point. I think at this point I was talking about the proper way to insert the multiple. You need to ensure you insert it at the point where the plant is going to grow and latch easily. As you can see here, I have it placed at the back of the plant where it's more likely to produce an area root and latch onto it. I also stated you want to secure it with something like Velcro or like a string, anything just to secure it until it eventually latches. And then I'm going to have this placed in a cool and shaded place away from direct sunlight, and that's pretty much it. They'll be my care for about a week, and then I send them over to my client, and hopefully he doesn't unalive them. Anyways babes, I hope you liked this video. Like and subscribe if you did. Bye.